it appears as though in a defamation suit, if I'm not mistaken, against Lauren Boebert. So I certainly want to get his take on that and many other issues. David Wheeler joining us right now. David, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm good, Brian. Glad to be here. Glad to meet you and Chris.
Thank you. Appreciate that, David. Okay, so let me make sure I got this story right. You put out stories on Lauren Boebert, some salacious stories with your sources. She goes on Sean Hannity's show. She threatens to sue you. She never does. You put out this lawsuit that in Colorado, and a judge throws it out, and now it's back on. Do I have that accurate? Explain that to us.
The only inaccuracy would be hold on, let me turn the volume down here. Would be in we filed originally in North Carolina, and then the judge didn't throw it all out. I mean, they asked the judge to dismiss it based upon venue, jurisdiction, merit, and a couple other items. And we knew going in that jurisdiction and venue were likely not going to fly with the judge. And so that's what the judge dismissed on. And in his ruling, he said it should be filed anew in Colorado.
Okay, gotcha, David. Okay, so explain to me why you filed in court again, and what are the damages here, and why did you file this against Lauren Boebert specifically?
Well, first of all, our story is based upon facts that our supporters and some of our sources gave us. And I think at the time she probably thought we were lying. You know, we came out and we said that she was a paid escort and that she had had 2 abortions. And obviously we don't care about that other than the fact she's a complete hypocrite and she votes against legalizing sex work as well as criminalizing abortion. So, you know, here's a woman that is the biggest hypocrite in Colorado, as far as I'm concerned. And so we put that information out, again, based upon, most of it's based upon recorded phone calls that we had with our sources or recorded interviews in person, as well as some text messages, email, and other written documents. So, you know, we're very solid on where we came up with this information, why we put it out.
Right.
And then she proceeds to try and defend herself by tearing us a new one. And, you know, that's fine in politics. If she would have said it once or twice on maybe one show, I wouldn't have had a problem with it. But she went on numerous shows across the United States. She went on Hannity's radio show, Hannity's TV show. She went on Mike Huckabee's show. She went on Tommy Lauren's show. And, you know, in total, we're talking probably tens of millions of combined viewers and listeners to those shows. Not that they're worth listening to, but and here's what she said, Brian. Here's what she said that put me over the edge and put the lawyer over the edge on defamation. She said that I knew what I was alleging was false, and that I said it anyway. And that is if I did that, sue away. You know what? I actually should be sued. But you know what? I was a paralegal for 4 years in Chicago. I know, I don't know the law intricately. I'm not an attorney and I'm not pretending to be one, but I know how far you can push this stuff. And I would never push it over the line to the point that I'd risk defamation or having to go to court to answer for myself. You know, I've got 3 kids, 3 young kids. I'm not going to jail for Lauren Boebert. I'll tell you that much.
Right. I don't think many would, David. Well, listen, I think you have a case, but let me go back to some of the things that you guys have, with your sources, have said about her. And let me ask you this. Do you believe, with the sources that you have, that Lauren Boebert actually did have 2 abortions? And do you actually believe that she was an escort girl based on your sources and the people that you guys talked to?
Absolutely. We haven't backed down once. Even when she came at us, you remember she was on Hannity's show, I think it was June 16th, 2022. You know, your listeners may not have all those details in hand, but I think the thrust of it was that she was coming after us. She was going to sue us, and she was going to sue me into oblivion. She was also going to turn me over to the local DA for violating Colorado pre-election law that said I couldn't assert anything against her 30 days prior to an election. Well, none of that happened, dude. She didn't file a lawsuit. We haven't heard a peep from her attorney. And we actually reached out to the district attorney there, and he hadn't heard from her either. So, she's all hot air. She blows smoke. I think what happened was she probably sat down with counsel, legal counsel, and they said, well, is any of this true or potentially true? And the lawyer didn't get the answer he was hoping for. And he said, we don't have a case here. So why would we file and get you in further trouble and make this guy famous?
That was my next point, David. I was just going to ask you about that. Doesn't it speak volumes to the fact that she never sued you guys? If in fact you were putting out information that was blatantly false, let's just say, for argument's sake, she would have gone through with the lawsuit. But you're absolutely right. The fact that she didn't go through with this lawsuit, and I'm sure she sat down with her counsel, leads me, and I think any reasonable person would agree, that the stuff you guys put out is most likely true, and she wants it to go away. But guess what? That's not how this country works. It's not going to go away, and I'm glad you kept that stuff out there. And here's a woman.
Well, here's the interesting thing. You remember I worked on the Obama campaign as an advanced guy in 2017 or 2007 in Iowa. And one of the things that I always became impressed with him about was the fact that, he would let others kind of shoot their messages out and maybe shoot themselves in the foot, and then he would respond later. He was very patient with some issues. He wouldn't just rush to the cameras and give a response to something. Well, that's really interesting that what's happened here is, number one, we put out the allegations. She fired at us, said we were a bunch of liars. We were going to sue you to the cows come home. To be honest with you, I felt threatened at that time. I started getting more hate mail. I started to get more death threats. And I had a couple guys show up at the door at my home. Thank goodness the kids weren't here. But, I started thinking, well, God, she's got $6 million in the bank. She's got every lawyer that she could possibly want. So, she kind of won that round. We backed off. We let her do whatever she was going to do. But the chickens have come home to roost now, almost a year later, and that she's lost credibility with people that maybe even were supporting her last fall. They're like, well, wait a second, where's the lawsuit you promised against this guy? So,
right.
The Obama principle of kind of let them hang themselves and then come back with the facts has played out really well for us here.
David, of course, a lot of us want to see what the end game actually is when it comes to this. Obviously, her opponent in 2022, which is one of the closest congressional elections during the 2022 election term, went down in Colorado. He's already declared that he's going to be running again in 2024. You guys and your PAC, Muckrakers PAC, had obviously an influence on the election in North Carolina with Madison Cawthorn. So what are your expectations as far as an end game here for 2024 with respect to this election in Colorado?
Yeah, we could set the legal machinations aside. We've committed, and our donors have committed to getting rid of her in any legal, factual way we can. I mean, one of the things that folks need to understand is, we don't throw around a bunch of crap. I mean, we focus on facts, we dig deep, and then we either partner with media and they put it out, or we put it out ourselves. Sometimes it's too salacious or too controversial, even for some of the online news organizations to even put out.
In 2023 America, I don't know about that, my friend.
Yeah.
2023 United States of America.
You have to remember our biggest claim to fame is probably, the Madison Cawthorn face humping deal. This is a family show, so we'll keep it clean. But, that had been shopped to probably every news organization in Washington before they came to us. And it was just too hot for most people to do. But, we focus on facts and, we're determined to get her out. I think she will self-destruct. I mean, we're not going to wait. We're going to, we monitor everything she does almost every day of the week. And when she lies or cheats, we
Sure.
pointed out.
You're not gonna,
And so
David,
I'm a
you're not
busy
going to get
guy.
an argument. You're not going to get an argument for me. I mean, to me, Lauren Boebert, GED Lauren is what I like to call her, because as you know, she late got her GED just so she could run for office. She's never accomplished anything in her life. Her husband is despicable, exposing himself to children at a bowling alley. I'm not sure it gets much worse than that. But yet she wants to talk about pedophilia when, you know, her husband is sitting right next to her, at least for now. Yeah, she's despicable. She's ignorant. She doesn't care about anybody else but herself, and she wants to remain in power. And I love what you guys are doing. With that being said, David, I want to get your thoughts on Donald Trump. I'm sure you have some opinions on what's going to be eventually going down, maybe even tomorrow, that Donald Trump is expected to be indicted in another juicy story, I guess you could call it that, when it comes to Stormy Daniels. David, what are your thoughts on this? And what are your thoughts on the way Republicans are responding to it?
Well, our friend Lauren has come out and endorsed him for 24, Lauren Boebert. I think he's not above the law. Let's let the law take care of him. I listened to a little bit of the beginning of your show, and I agree with you that, first of all, he may not be indicted. We don't know. And anything that Donald Trump says, you got to take it with a grain of salt. But, I've been around the law. I've been around criminal investigations, not personally, but professionally. And, the DA is not going to get too far out of him over his skis on this one. If he's got something, he'll indict. If he doesn't, he'll let it go. They're professionals, and I trust them, and I don't think politics is being played into this. As a matter of fact, I think he's probably getting more consideration than he's probably due.
You're probably right, David. If I had to ask you your opinion on who you would like to support in 2024, I guess it's a two-part question. Number one, do you want Joe Biden to run again? If not, who would you like to see as far as the Democrats go running for president in 2024?
Well, that's an easy one for me. I'm a big Joe Biden fan. I actually met him in 1986. I was working in Iowa for a candidate that hosted him. I drove with then Senator Biden, spent some time with him. And then subsequent to that, when he ran in Iowa a couple other times, I was able to spend some time and not necessarily get to know him personally, but I trust him. I think he's been a great president. I mean, look at everything that has happened in the last 2 years. And I think he's an honorable gentleman. And age is obviously an issue, but I'd rather have an older Joe Biden than a scumbag like Trump. So.
Oh, listen, there's no question there. I think most people would agree with you on that. But with that being said, you think Ron DeSantis has any chance to defeat Donald Trump on the right and be their nominee, or do you see it being Donald Trump, even with all these possible indictments, in the future?
One thing I learned, I ran for the state Senate out here, and the guy I was running against was nearly indicted. And I think he would have won had he even been indicted. So I don't think DeSantis has a chance. I think out here in North Carolina is Trump territory. I live in a rural part of North Carolina, and it's Trump 24/7. I think, once Trump is run, 28 will probably be DeSantis' year if he's still around. And so I think it's Trump.
Yeah,
undoubtedly.
I tend to agree.
What fascinates me, Brian and David, is that the discussion, and David, you just brought it up, as far as Joe Biden, obviously age is something that we, take a look at, and we understand that people are going to focus on it. But they act like Donald Trump is some spring chicken. Donald Trump is maybe 3 or 4 years younger than Joe Biden. So this whole idea, right, that Joe Biden is just so far past his prime and that he's on the verge of dementia and just being unable to govern on any serious level.
Yeah.
But Donald Trump, is because he's 76 years old.
Yeah.
The idea, to me, David, it flat out, is just another indication that there's a lot of scenarios that present themselves when it comes to observing political candidates where it's very difficult to take people seriously, David. I'm sorry.
No, I agree. I think if you're a union guy in Vegas, culinary worker, Joe Biden's your guy. If you're an elderly person in Nevada somewhere, Joe Biden's your guy. I mean, these guys will try and decimate any of the Medicare or other social welfare assistance that's out there, and they've said it publicly.
If,
So I don't know how anybody could support anybody other than Biden, and the Democrats need to just shut the F up and get behind him, because sometimes we are our own worst enemies. And
yeah,
and if we don't get behind him now, we're going to have some problems in about 6 months. So I would,
and David, you can speak to that because you're someone, of course, who has, a decades of experience when it comes to, executive leadership in I believe in as an event management, the industry that you're in. I've been in the service industry for upwards of, 27 years as well, too. So you're talking, obviously, something that hits close to home with respect to Las Vegas and the unions and how this, how this town runs.
Oh, no question. If you're just joining us, by the way, David B. Wheeler, the president of Muckrakers PAC Incorporated, another lawsuit put forth between his organization against Lauren Boebert. A couple more quick questions for you, David, and we appreciate your time. How do you deal with MAGA Republicans in North Carolina? Because, I do a radio show here every day. I have to deal with flat earthers, people that believe Donald Trump still won the 2020 election. People out there that believe, Hunter Biden and Joe Biden have committed war crimes, you would think. I mean, people out there that just do not live in the basis of reality, that think Donald Trump is the second coming and that it's the Biden crime family. I mean, how do you deal with these people who go after Dr. Fauci every day, who say COVID is a hoax, said it was a hoax for years? How do you deal with these people?
mostly ignore them. I'm in a position where I can, you guys can't, but there's been a whole evolution of how we all tried to deal with these folks. First, we tried to understand what were they even thinking? How could you think that way? And then when we realized they weren't rational thinkers, we tried to convince them otherwise with facts. And then that didn't work. So we kind of just took the position of just talk to me, tell me what you think, and then walk away from it. Right. I'm at a point where I don't care what they think. And they just need to go live in their own space in their own head and realize that they don't speak for the rest of us. They may have those beliefs, but in my political world, I just ignore them for the most part. Or you know what? I do what most Democrats don't do is I push back and tell them they're full of it and get out of my face. And I can be just as mean and nasty as you are, but you're not going to convince me one way or another that Trump is president and that there was this massive conspiracy and all this other crap. I think Democrats got to get better about pushing back and just tell them to shut up and give them some facts.
I do enjoy debating MAGAs because it's pretty easy to destroy them on the radio. But I'll be honest with you, sometimes it gets a little frustrating. I have to ask you this, David. If the cameras are off, there's no audio, and you're in a room alone, sitting at a table with Lauren Boebert, I want to know, not in a court of law, I want to know just privately having a conversation with her, which I would imagine will never happen. But if it did, David, what would you say to her?
A really good question, Brian. I've actually offered to do that, to sit down, and if she needs somebody in the room to record it or whatever. I would like to just ask her some very, very simple questions. Number one, why is it you feel the need to just lie? I mean, and give her some examples. And secondly, do you know what your job is? Your job isn't to, as Adam Frisch, who's running against her, adamfrisch.com or adamforcolorado.com. Great guy. He calls it angertainment. I think it was coined by somebody else in Washington, but Adam uses it with permission. And, why is it that everybody's the enemy? Why is it that you think Democrats actually want to kill babies and think they're all elitist and above everybody? That's not the case. I mean, I'm astounded that, I'm a small business guy and I've worked for myself since I was 22. I still believe in liberal values, but you would think the way these folks talk that they believe all Democrats hate all business people, that we want 100% tax rate and abortion should, be available at the local car wash. And that's not the case at all. I think we're all for reasonable restrictions around abortion. Let a woman decide what those are, not me. And so I just ask, where does this anger come from? Where does this meanness come from? And how can we help you get out of that bubble? Because you're a member of Congress, and members of Congress can do great things. I mean, even if you're in the wrong party or the opposite party in control, there's tons of projects that her district is missing. And that's the worst part of having a crazy person like her in Congress is the constituents in that district are not getting what they paid for.
Yeah,
they're
David,
not getting new roads, they're not getting bridges, etc.
So, David, there's a reason why, right, that we do put together people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert. It's because they had that outrage, right? They had that selectivity when it comes to issues that they love to put out there and complain about and bitch and moan about, that they don't necessarily have solutions to problems, right? There's not any sound, logical approach being taken by MTG or Lauren Boebert when it comes to issues. They just like to complain about it, and that ends up being their message, essentially.
Yeah, but Brian, where has it gotten them? I mean, where's Lauren Boebert in the hierarchy of political figures in our country right now? She's in the bottom. I mean, not only did she piss off Kevin McCarthy, but she's pissed off all the Democrats, and she only won by 546 votes in a district, guys, that was plus 18 Trump. So, she's not doing anything right. And politics is supposed to be additive, not subtractive.
Agree. Yep.
You're supposed to add votes to the way you conduct yourself publicly and deal with constituents. And she doesn't understand that you have to add on top of what you won last time in order to win this time. I predict she's going to go down this time by, probably 4 or 5 points. I think people are just done with her.
I agree. All right. So I asked you all these good questions. I get to ask one really borderline inappropriate, stupid question, if that's okay, David.
Because it's Shapiro. You do that, right?
Of course. Yeah. Do you think there's
ask 2 or 3? I love it.
Minimum. Okay, it's fine. Minimum 1, David. Okay. You think there's any chance down the road that Lauren Boebert could be employed at a brothel just outside of Las Vegas, Nevada?
I can see her owning a brothel. I don't necessarily think she's gonna be a brothel employee or a brothelee. I don't know what you call that. I can see her owning one, and her husband, he would be a great John. I mean, there are rumors about that, and we're not going to go there, but I can see the two of them doing that. They've got some young boys that could probably help park cars and pour beer and
is it
like
possible,
that down the road.
Can you get some of the customers that were at Lauren Boebert's former restaurant that got sick, right? You remember that story?
Oh, yeah.
That her restaurant got a bunch of people food poisoning, right?
Yep. Yeah. 54 people after eating her, I think it was pork sliders at a county fair. 54 people reported they got sick. So she lost I think she lost a license over that too. And she was serving beer to kids at the golf course through her restaurant on the golf course, and she lost her liquor license because of that. So this woman's a real winner. She's got a whole rap sheet about literally 2 pages long, and I'm not exaggerating, of incursions or problems with the law. And she never shows up to court either, so they have to issue bench warrants for her. This person's a piece of work, man.
If you had to, last question. All right, I'll put you on the spot here. If you had to give a 1-2 sentence definition, if Lauren Boebert was a vocabulary word in the dictionary, how would you define Lauren Boebert as a definition of what she is? What is Lauren Boebert?
Lauren Boebert is a very sad woman who is worthless and weak.
I don't disagree.
That's a very definitive statement. I'd have to be on board with so much of that.
Now, in her lawsuit, when she brings this up in front of the jury, they're going to have to play this part too.
Yeah,
that is my opinion, and I'm sticking with it.
I am as well. I call her trash. That's kind of the word. GED.
Yeah, I think she gives trash a bad word though, or a bad name.
You're probably right.
She's not very intelligent. And one thing you got wrong about her GED, it took her 4 tries, dude. And they finally gave it to her out of sympathy, I think.
I didn't know that. Wait, hold on.
Yes.
It took her 4 tries to get her diploma.
So David, we have to
Yes.
push back on Brian's statement. Brian made that statement saying that she's never done it in her life. I got to say, she was perseverant when it came to getting her GED, Brian. And she did own that restaurant, which everyone's packing heat. And, and
David, why can't we find
in Colorado?
Why can't we find
So
a guy?
Something.
Why can't we find a guy that hired her for the hour? Like, is there any way you can find somebody that was an actual customer, or maybe you already did?
Well. That's a very good question, Brian. And on advice of counsel, and in all seriousness, we have received recently even more information that we're ferreting out right now.
Like hourly
You know
rate
what?
and all that stuff, like
Yeah,
specifics.
you know what? Why don't let me get through it with these guys. We've got to verify these photos are real.
Okay.
And that's going to take a couple days
Okay.
because of all the deep fake crap out of there. Why don't I come back on your show if it's real?
Love you.
And
Love you to do
we'll, I'm not sure we could share the pictures. But
Well, we
could
can
share
talk
the
about
substance of them and where they came from and what we intend to do with them.
Fair enough, because Chris Wynn, my co-host here, is looking for a deal on an hourly rate. So, well, no, in all seriousness, David, some of this is fun to talk about, no question, but I do appreciate what you do on a serious note. You hold these politicians to account, and you call out the hypocrisy, and I appreciate anybody that does that, and I appreciate what you're doing. I mean, you're part of the main reason why Madison Cawthorn is no longer a politician, the definition of a liar, and I appreciate what you do, David. You're always welcome back on this show, and I look forward to having another discussion with you down the road, okay?
Thanks, David.
Okay, anytime, guys. Thanks, Chris.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Brian.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you. You too. That's David Wheeler, the president of Muckrakers PAC Incorporated, and look at that. I got to promise that maybe we could get some more salacious details into the possible alleged, how do I even call this? Lauren Boebert, possible legal prostitute? No, illegal prostitution, right?
No, she was apparently the allegations that she was an escort.
Yes.
Right. And that